Hey everybody, and welcome to this Bald Eagle play-by-play brought to you by Explore.org and the Raptor Resource Project. We're glad to have you along for the ride today. My name is Mike Fitz with Explore.org, and I'm joined by my two co-hosts from the Raptor Resource Project. First, let's welcome John Howell, the director of the Raptor Resource Project. John, how you doing today?
I'm doing good. Thanks for having us on. Lots to talk about.
Yeah, we're going to have an absolutely full show for sure. And then also our second co-host here is Amy Reese with the Rap Project. So Amy, how are you today?
I'm doing great. It's wonderful to be here.
And once again, this is a Bald Eagle play-by-play, so we'll look at live footage of bald eagles through the Raptor resource cams on explore.org. We will describe what we see in the behavior and biology of the birds. We'll examine some recent events seen on the cams, including perhaps some non-eagle cams. We'll look at those from time to time. These are all in partnership with the Raptor Resource Project. And then finally, throughout the program today, we're going to answer audience questions that were submitted in advance. So please be sure to submissions for future Bald Eagle play-by-plays through the Ask Your Bald Eagle question form. You can ask a moderator for that in the chat for a link to it. And thanks to everybody who's sent in their questions so far. I read every one of them that's been submitted. There are far too many for us to answer, but we're going to try to get through a bunch of them today. To begin, however, if you're curious about the location of Explore.org's cameras with the Raptor Resource Project, then let's take a quick look. We're traveling to the upper Mississippi region of Iowa, Minnesota, and Wisconsin. The Decorah North Bald Eagle Nest is located on private property north of Decorah, Iowa. And heading farther north from there, we watch a peregrine falcon eyrie at the Great Spirit Bluff on the Minnesota side of the river. And then there's the Mississippi Flyway Cam that sits nearby in the river's floodplain within the upper Mississippi National Fish and Wildlife Refuge. And then staying on the Wisconsin side, the Trempealeau Eagles make their home on private property near Trempealeau, Wisconsin. They will be a major focus of our show today just because of the events that's happened there recently. And finally, Castle Rock is home to a peregrine falcon eyrie as well. And with our falcons, we're looking at hatch within maybe the end of the week. So that'll be, I think, really exciting. There's something to see on each one of these cameras that we have right now, John and Amy, but maybe we should start with the big news that everyone who's been watching the cameras recently has been focusing on. I was saying before we went live that it always seems like the major events at the Trempealeau Nest happen on the off weeks when we're not doing this program. But on April 21, so about 10 days ago, you would have seen 3 eaglets in the oldest one is the one that we're seeing right now in this live footage. This is number TE3, and its siblings TE4 and TE5 did not survive. Both of them died on April 21. It seemed like after exposure in cold weather. So, John, maybe you can talk about the vulnerability of these newly hatched eagles due to hypothermia, especially when the weather was like it was. And this is footage from, I think, April 21. Cold, temperatures in the 30s Fahrenheit. So challenging conditions for these birds when they're that young.
Yeah, definitely. What I remember seeing and everyone else that was watching is really kind of a deviation from what we're normally used to seeing. And that is, we even talked about this, about the opportunity when the weather is nasty, just the parents are usually incubating. And notice I said parents. At the time, we weren't really that sure, what was going on at this nest, but it's become more clear that it is pretty much a one eagle show as far as whether or not these eaglets are going to survive, and that is the female there, Mrs. T. We haven't seen near as much of the male eagle there, but so what that led to at the time was we're just sitting there cheering on little TE5 and TE4, which had gotten more food, but just seeing the first feedings that were actually getting taken in by TE5, and we get this cold, wet weekend of weather, and there's disturbance going on. Mr. T is not at the nest really doing much assistance with incubating, and then we get one of really a chance event of one of our camera operators watching Mr. T come into the nest, take one of the fish and fly out of it, follow that very quickly on the controls with the camera and watch him take it over to a nest out on the Minnesota side of the main channel of the Mississippi River on an island out there. And so all while this is happening, we're hearing the chatter of Mrs. T kind of defending and calling out and probably trying to ward off another eagle potentially that's in the area. So she did not incubate those eggs right away in that inclement weather, and without thermal down and at the time frame that this happened, those eaglets really have hours, maybe a half a day or so, especially the youngest TE5 that really had not received a whole lot of nourishment. That snack pack or that full crop you're really to tap into. And we saw hypothermia set in, and we lost TE5 and TE4.
And Amy, this has become a really fascinating situation to watch, because it seems like, so the male is holding territory over two nests. We were just looking at the nest across the river. It's about 1,700 feet, which is about a third of a mile or about a half kilometer away. So really, for an eagle, it's very close by. And yeah, it was really just our sharp-eyed camera operators who were able to sleuth this out, because there was a lot of speculation about whether the male had another nest in the area. We didn't really know that for sure, but it was the camera operators who confirmed it.
Yeah, absolutely. And in fact, I remember the last time we did a play-by-play, we brought up that this is a possibility, and we were talking about it earlier. I was like, yeah, I'm willing to entertain that. But it was, for me, sort of like, oh, entertain, right? Like, I really thought it was that we were looking at a new male eagle because the behaviors were so similar that maybe we'd had a different Mr. T this year than last year. And then suddenly our camera operators, who have suspected this all along, are able to provide proof that we have a second nest. And that's such an uncommon happening. It's not something I'd even really seriously considered. So as usual, the eagles are always teaching us new lessons, and this has been just so interesting to watch. I'm glad that TE3 got through it all, because I'm also really enjoying the little eaglet growl.
Well, yeah, animals prove us wrong all the time. I know the brown bears and katmai who I watch frequently during the summertime. They've done it too. So I would tell the audience, oh, don't expect the bear to do this, and then the bear goes ahead and does it. So it's something that happens frequently. We did have as we're looking at live footage here of the surviving eaglet in the Trempealeau nest. So this is TE3, the oldest from this year's clutch. I have a question sort of related to Mr. T and his presence this year and his behavior. So Joan was wondering, from what I understand, the current Mr. T showed up last season, so it's possible he displaced the former Mr. T. Given how close the two nests are together, do you think he has claimed the area as his territory to the point that he would fight off other males who might show an interest in Mrs. T?
That's an excellent question, and I wish I had an answer for this one. There's just so few. So basically what we're looking at here is polygyny, and that would be one male and then multiple females, in this case two, as opposed to polyandry, which would be one female with multiple males. So we've got a few famous examples of that. In this case, though, polygyny is interesting because we've got two separate nests, as everybody knows, right? So it's not really cooperative breeding because the two females are technically sharing Mr. T, and they're not fighting one another as far as we know, but they're not really sharing or cooperating on raising young either, right? I have no idea what Mr. T would do if another eagle showed up. I also find it interesting that the other eagle appears to be, I guess, what I'd call his primary in the triad, because his behavior in January and February seemed very one nest, one eagle, right? We saw him a lot. He was copulating. He was taking his turns incubating eggs. He was caring and paying attention to Mrs. T. So that he just suddenly up and left for the other nest, and my guess would be late in March, just based on what we were seeing, is a completely fascinating part of the puzzle. But given what we have now, I can't even predict what he would do, as so often happens. We're just going to have to wait and see.
Yeah, and that's a really good question. I think we've been talking about that too, and we can think about the possibilities about what's happening. We've been experiencing the effects of bird flu, HPAI, across the country, and we know of the first year it hit bald eagles and great horned owls, probably the hardest out of the raptors that we typically are watching here. And we've got cases of that, plus still lead poisoning and things like that happening. So like Amy was talking about even in the previous play-by-play, just the changes in the cycle of nesting with eggs being laid later, and little nuances like that. It's really hard to tell exactly what's going on season to season when we're so used to seeing at Decorah and Decorah North this relationship year on year with the same two eagles, and maybe a change when one of them dies or something happens, but still a much more regular situation of mating and working as a team, managing a nest. The other thing that I think is interesting to think about is typically the male falcon or the male eagle. They're drawing the female into a territory and nesting, and that's something that is just one of those traits that happens with raptors. And so there's going to be some defense of the area, and with that nest as close by as it is, I think that's a pretty good possibility that he's defending that area, and he could be warding off any potential suitors or other males for Mrs. T in that nest. That nest is half a mile away, barely. So it's pretty close when you're talking about eagle nests and line of sight, and they can call and hear each other back and forth and see everything that's going on. So very interesting options. One thing I can mention is that we did not have as good a cam coverage last year. Our main big camera that we had there just it decided not to work after we got it all set up, and it was working earlier in the season. So we've got some footage that we can look at to see if we can tag and look at some of the biometrics, but we just don't have near as good a data by looking at the biometrics of both eagles from last year to this year. So just again, it sheds light on how important it is to have good cameras with focusing abilities and cam operators attending these to get the kind of data that we can answer these questions.
I also think that your point, John, about this nest being more in flux is really a good one, because with where it is, the population of eagles is also just so much more dense. Like, in some ways, it looks like the same neighborhood, and it's not that far from Decorah North. It's also in the Driftless and so on and so forth, but it's like really a different eagle neighborhood in a lot of ways.
And let's not forget that Mrs. T is challenged to care for her surviving eaglet here, because she's not getting a whole lot of cooperation from Mr. T. It seems like he's focusing on that nest across the river more than anything else. And we had, we saw a clip of it earlier in the broadcast. Maybe we can bring that back again. Talk about the ability of adult eagles to protect their young in really inclement weather. This, I think, has been nicknamed the mombrella or the dadbrella in these situations. So Amy, this is a behavior where to me it's always amazing how well bald eagles can tolerate these cold conditions and protect their offspring. In a situation where, again, if I didn't have protective clothing, I was thrown up in an eagle nest, I would become hypothermic, very quickly.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And I love it, like when we get my umbrella and you can see the water shedding off her feathers and how much care she's giving. They're absolutely acclimated to this type of thing. And that's one of the things that's great, but also hard about watching a wild nest, because we really do never know what's going to happen. We prove that every year. But also we see these conditions that if we were in them would be miserable or intolerant. Like, how would we deal with this? But they're evolved to deal with it. It's what they do. And Mrs. T has done an amazing job. Our camera operators have been paying attention to the food she's bringing in. She's bringing in a lot of food. TE3 is getting a lot to eat. And again, he's this isn't it. It's the only eagle that's in there. So it has the benefit of getting all of the food. So John and I had talked about this whole question about TE3 being re-nested with foster parents. And John, do you want to take this one, John? Because we've discussed it, and we've discussed
Sure.
similar situation, reason we don't do it.
Yeah, maybe we can bring that audience question up, because people were wondering about sort of like the smallest, the youngest eaglet in this nest. And this is before they happen to succumb to the elements. But Diane was wondering, is it possible that TE5 could be re-nested with foster parents? And I think this gives us an opportunity to talk about intervention policies and what may be appropriate, what isn't appropriate, and the risks that are involved with intervention in these situations.
Yeah, well, I think it happened so quickly when we're looking at that. You can imagine, I just remember watching that happening, and talking back and forth with the cam operators when they were watching this behavior of Mr. T taking fish out of the nest, and just there were things going on there. For one thing, it happened very quickly, and we never jump into situations like this typically without thinking it through and really looking at what is best for the eagles that are there. And also, I think taking a policy of this is nature, and the first charge here is letting nature take her course, and letting the eagles, trust the eagles. I think we say it a lot to folks that are watching. We really can't. Could we have made a judgment that even TE3 was going to make it when the other two didn't survive? I think the big thing that I look back on this, and I think we were managing as we are going into this, is as long as there's a chance, the best option is for the parents to deal with it and take care of whatever situation it is. And in this case, again, we look back on it and we can do a play-by-play, armchair quarterback, whatever you want to call it, and say, if we would have been trying to go up into that nest and make that decision, we probably could have disturbed it even more, pushed Mrs. T off of the nest. She would not have had an opportunity to connect quickly, and when she could with TE3, and do what she needed to do to keep TE3 wild and growing and warm TE3 up. So I think, looking back at what happened, we had a great outcome. We've got an eaglet now that has its thermal down. It's learning the tough ropes that not many eaglets get, and that is it doesn't have near the coverage and interaction, totally different type of interaction with its parent. You notice I said parent or parents. it's been mostly Mrs. T. It's totally different than what the two eaglets saw last year at this nest, or even our Decorah nests, where we see much more attention from both eagle parents and much more coverage. This little eaglet TE3 is definitely having a eaglet childhood that is much more independent than we would normally see.
And Amy, I think you mentioned a little bit about this earlier, but we had another audience question from Val, who was wondering, do eagles like T3 or TE3 prefer the fact that he or she now unfortunately has no siblings or competitors for food from mom, or do they prefer siblings around for comfort, compassion, etc.? That's really one of those questions that we can't fully answer, because we can understand a lot about what eagles experience, but what they're experiencing in their minds is, we can only truly speculate about. But we know there are survival advantages that maybe this eaglet is experiencing now because it doesn't have any sibling competition.
Yeah, so I mean, a couple of thoughts on that. This eaglet doesn't know anything else. It only had siblings very briefly. This is, it just hatched. So this is what it knows. So I don't think it doesn't have a basis for comparison. So even if it could have those kinds of feelings, and they have internal lives, but they don't necessarily have internal lives like ours, right? I don't know that it would. But right now it just couldn't. So that's one thing. And being a singleton definitely confers a survival advantage in terms of food, especially in these circumstances. So Miss T only has to care for one eaglet. The food she brings in is, when you look at that crop and all of the poop, yeah, it's providing plenty of nourishment. So that's giving it a survival advantage. And then we also have questions about how does this affect later development. And again, we don't know that, but it's getting plenty of stimulation as it interacts with other creatures in its environment. We had that crazy zoomy squirrel a few days ago, chickadee visitors, nuthatch visitors. We've seen it do defense. We've seen it interact quite a bit with Mrs. T, excuse me. We've seen it interact very occasionally with Mr. T. So this eaglet is going to be fine. And I would say overall, especially in this situation, there's a survival advantage. And the eaglet is getting its needs met, both in terms of food, absolutely, but also in terms of stimulation, companionship, observation, and learning.
And this whole situation is quite fascinating, just because examples of quote unquote cooperative breeding in bald eagles hasn't been observed very often. There's a very famous pair of eagles with two males and one female in a single nest who are all have been cooperatively breeding at that single nest. This is a different situation though, Amy, where we have a male who has basically two active in his territory. And maybe you could break down in brief sort of like the differences between those types of polygamy, because it's not the same thing. It's different between those two situations, even though in a sense this could be considered a case of cooperative of breeding. And I think in a recent quote you summed it up pretty nicely when you said bald eagle polygyny functions more like a mating system where poly seems rooted in shared parental care.
Yeah, so cooperative breeding in general is when more than two parent birds attend a nest and help raise young, and that can look like a lot of things. So I want to say sparrow weavers in Africa, for example, you'll have extra birds, and depending on their relatedness, they might help feed the young, or they might help brood, or they might help incubate, or they might help tend the nest, right? So you have all of these birds sort of focused on this one single nest, and only two of them are parents. When you take that into its two biggest categories, you have the two primaries only mate with each other and everybody else is not involved in that whole scene, or you have polygamy where you will have two primaries mating with each other, but also possibly mating with a helper. So you have a question about paternity or maternity in the nest, right? Depending on what's going on. So in the situation you referred to, where we had one female and two males. That was the famous Fulton nest. Probably a lot of you have heard of it, although it wasn't one of our nests, but you had one female and two males. You had a female and a male the first year. He was kind of a lousy dad, right? Like he didn't participate in parental care, didn't feed the young. Eventually they died. Okay. So another male eagle shows up. She begins to bond with him, but the original male, Valor, stays around. Eventually she ends up with two mates, Valor 1 and Valor 2. She mates with both of them. Everybody works together to care for the nest. She's eventually killed, I believe this is Hope, by a couple of other eagles. The two males raise their young, because this was maybe 2 weeks into their nesting season, raise their young, and then, interestingly, recruit another female into their triad, right? So we don't know that they ever had, I guess what you would call a relationship with one another, but they certainly had a bond strong enough that they stayed together and recruited a new female. So that was truly cooperative breeding, because you had more than two adults in a nest attending on the young. So polygyny in raptors in general tends to look a lot more like what we're seeing now, although I was recently introduced to an exception to that, but it tends to look a lot more like what we're seeing right now. So you'll have one male, multiple females, two generally in eagles, because you see how much care the young need, right? Can't have a whole bunch. Also, they're real big, so you're not going to get that many into one nest. But two nests, multiple mates, and the females generally don't really share in raising the young. It's not truly cooperative other than that they're sharing a mate and not killing each other. So it's cooperative in that sense, but it's not truly cooperative with multiple birds attending one nest. And that's what we're seeing here, polygyny, two nests, one male, two females, not really cooperative, more like a mating system. So Elf Ruler, whose blog I looked at to think about and learn a little bit more about cooperative breeding as documented in eagles, did mention that there was a pair in California that had two females in one nest and a male. This is work done by Dr. Peter Sharp. You guys feature his cams also. And in that case, the two females were in one nest, but they made separate scrapes in the nest, which was really fascinating. So again, they weren't killing each other, cooperative, maybe, but this is not cooperative. This is one male, two females, two nests.
And then, yeah, you also partly answered this question, and I don't think we know what's going to happen here next year, but Nancy was wondering, the Trempealeau nest is one form of a triad parent model. All the other bald eagle triad models have been reported on. I'm curious to know if in those other triads, if that model was repeated year after year. So it's with the Fulton nest, yes. It remains to be seen with this nest here. We'll have to fast forward in time to know that for sure.
Yeah, it has been documented year over year in the very few nests that it's been documented in, but I completely agree. Wait and see. Eagles, among other things, teach us patience, even when we don't want to learn that lesson.
We do have, other birds to talk about and other situations, other updates to talk about, live footage that we want to go to. I definitely want to make time for that. But before we move on to those other things, and we can come back to the Trempealeau nest as well if we have time later on. I did want to give the both of you an opportunity to talk about, Mr. T's behavior in this whole situation, maybe what advantages it gives him, because we've definitely been seeing what I would describe as people who are, I don't know if they want to be, they say they're in the legitimate feelings for sure coming from a person, the angry disappointment that, this situation has come about because he's splitting his time in between these nests and he's not necessarily giving this main Trempealeau nest that we have the camera on, as much attention as he would if he wasn't carrying, or he didn't have two nests in his territory. But in a sense, it's also anthropomorphizing his behavior, right? Like his motivations are different than ours. Grace wrote in a question, and John, maybe I'll throw this one to you first. Grace was wondering, could you help us understand and appreciate Mr. T's role in the two nests at Trempealeau?
Yeah, definitely. It kind of reminds me of a situation that we had back in 2018 after we left. We were left without Dad Decorah, And Mom Decorah very quickly after that did, another male was attracted to the Decorah nest. This was N2B at the time. And she would not let him in the nest. She would perch with him close to the nest, and she would let him perch in the upper branches of the tree. But I don't remember ever an instance where he was allowed to come down into the nest and feed or do anything in that situation. And I guess the point I'm trying to make there is there's some component of protecting the area that in that specific instance, we watched Mom Decorah bring, fish from over at the fish hatchery into that nest, and she raised 3 eaglets. We called her Super Mom at that point, and really celebrated how she was able to manage that situation and successfully fledge 3 eaglets after pretty much on her own. The contribution it looked like from the male was helping to ward off other eagles and possibly other predators and protect the nest area. It's hard for us to really calculate the component of that that's happening here at Trempolo. If we had more cameras to really, look up on the bluff and check and see, watch, exactly what he's doing when he's not taking fish from that nest and bringing them over to his other nest. That I think is another really interesting component here is what leads to him provisioning and taking from specifically this nest and taking it over to the other nest on the Minnesota side. It's really, I think that would be really neat to understand what is causing that. It certainly isn't a conscious necessarily choice like we would think of, like I like this one better. I'm going to go take the fish over here from this nest. It's really hard to know that. So I think it's a great question. We probably won't know, but as far as the benefits, uh, he's participating in some way. He may be helping protect the area, and I think we just know from our observations that the other nest is definitely his primary gets his primary attention.
Yeah, and I have to say, when I first told an unnamed family member about the whole situation, the response was, "I hate him already." So I think it's very normal to have these kinds of feelings, and I don't really have anything to add to what John said. I agree. He's probably protecting the area to some degree. We know there are times he's roosted there at night and responded to her calling. So I, I personally, I don't think he's like a bad eagle, although I get why it can be so distressing to watch. He's just doing, I guess, what makes sense for him in the moment. I don't really have anything to add other than that.
Yeah, and I understand, like when you watch animals, it's easy to get emotional, and sometimes, and I see it in comments sometimes on like our YouTube videos on explore.org, where especially around bears, where I say, hey, it's okay to feel emotional around these animals, or about these animals, and someone will be like, oh, you're just being a wimp and things like that. And it's like, no, we are emotional, and as much as we want to pretend that we're rational beings, I don't think humans are all that rational. So it's fine to feel emotion, but what we want to avoid doing is judging animals by human standards, because their set of ethics and morals is different than our own, and they're surviving really essentially in the only way that they know how to survive. And we're seeing, Miss T right here feeding her surviving eaglet a lot of fish and being successful. So congratulations, to her. I mean, she just perseveres through these situations. She just does what she needs to do, and it's really great to see. Well, again, we'll come back to these birds hopefully towards the end of the program, but a lot of other things to talk about. And if you're joining us a little bit late, thanks for tuning in. My name is Mike Fitz with Explore. I'm here with John Howe and Amy Reese from the Raptor Resource Project. Uh, where I think a lot of people are looking forward to the end of this week because the falcon nests that we have cameras on along the Mississippi River with Raptor Resource Project, we're looking at the potential for those eggs to hatch by the end of this week. So maybe if we can, Brian, if we can go to Brian, our producer, if we can cut to the Great Spirit Bluff for just a moment. This clutch here, 4 eggs in it, and it should hatch, maybe starting around May 5 if all goes well. And then Castle Rock, which is the other nest that we're watching on explore.org along the Mississippi, May 6 for both of those. You know, speaking of, drama and soap opera like events with birds, Amy, definitely it was at the Great Spirit Bluff nest. We were talking about this, just a few weeks ago. It seemed like the male here, Newman, maybe wasn't going to have a female partner this year because she, Elaine, was seemed much more interested in a male at a different territory, but she just chose this one, to our surprise.
Oh, that was so fascinating to watch. And, Newman is normally hauling in prospective mates left and right. Like, yes, he usually ends up, well, this is a little bit different. The Falcons generally end up with the same partners year after year. But Newman is, I guess I would say, a terribly eligible bachelor, right? So last year he gets this 1-year-old. So not yet mature. He courts her. He spends the summer with her. She doesn't lay eggs. That can sometimes happen with 1-year-olds. It doesn't. But when she comes back this year, she goes to a different territory. And she does, it's not that far, it's about 5 miles from GSB. So she flies back and forth between the two, but she seems to prefer the male Artie at the other territory. Well, that's interesting. She lays her first egg over at the other territory. So it's like, well, that's it, game over. Sorry, Newman, fingers crossed for you for another mate. And then she goes back, she lays her second egg, or her first egg at GSB there, and then she lays her second egg there, and she lays her third egg there, and it's like, well, I don't know what happened. It looked like she preferred the other territory initially, but here she is over at GSB, and Newman has a mate, so I will say I was happy for Newman.
So yeah, this is and when those falcon chicks hatch, they are pretty cute. I will, baby eaglets, especially after like a few weeks old, I don't think they're like the most, and I'm going to anthropomorphize them after I told everybody to try to avoid that, but I don't think they're the best looking like young birds. But the baby peregrine falcons, man, when they come out, they are just like these little white fuzzballs. They are really adorable animals overall. So we're looking forward to these eggs hatching soon. So watch at the end of this week, again, May 5 for GSB, who are watching here, Great Spirit Bluff, and then May 6 for Castle Rock. That's about the time when we might expect the first egg to hatch. Some sad news, though, coming from the goose nest that we had been watching, because the last time we had a play-by-play, we were expecting by now to have the goose, its clutch, or her clutch, excuse me, to hatch and have left the nest long ago. But there may be 10 days beyond, I think, the possible hatch window. So it looks like this clutch has failed overall. John, do we know really anything about, possible reasons why an entire clutch might fail? Occasionally certain eggs don't hatch, but with a bird that appears healthy, has been incubating the eggs consistently, the behavior seems normal, but the eggs just didn't hatch. So do we know anything about maybe the factors that might lead into that or cause it?
Yeah, I think one thing I was just thinking about was we know that we had a successful hatch at both of these former eagle nests, now goose eagle wannabes at N1 and N2B. And I'm almost curious as to know, we got a good enough zooming in. I don't know that we've done a lot of biometrics to check and see if we can identify geese in these nests year on year, but if we could do it anywhere, I think we could with the footage that we've got. We've got some pretty good close-ups. So I'm interested just to try to answer that question. Is it another female goose on the nest? Reason I say that is is I think probably the most likely case here is, and I don't know this better than, probably better to talk to a biologist that knows geese better about whether or not male infertility or female would be the case here, but with none of the eggs hatching, I think it's probably one of those two scenarios. We did kind of consider and look at the possibility that, you know, sometimes geese can be a nuisance, and sometimes cities have use techniques to try to cull or stop the successful breeding of geese, just for clarity of water and stopping the fecal matter from numbers and numbers and numbers of geese in in small ponds and lakes and creeks and things like that. They can do some control with trying to make the eggs infertile by feeding different, uh, I guess, chemicals to them in their feed to stop them from, I think the most common technique is actually making the eggs unviable by poking holes in them or replacing the eggs with non-viable plastic eggs. But I think it's just usually rendering the eggs by poking holes and things like that so they won't hatch. Don't think that that's the case in this. Uh, Obviously, it wasn't poking holes in eggs or anything like that. It probably was not use of something to stop successful baby gosling from developing inside that egg. So it's probably more likely just an infertile male or a female.
Yeah, unfortunately that, that happens. I mean, we know in people too, it's, not, it can sometimes be a struggle to have children. And it's the same with wildlife too. Not all wildlife, you know, it can do it in a very, in an easy manner. But, uh, they'll try again, next year, with, if everything allows them to do that. But we have this opportunity on Exploded.org to really see the full spectrum of nature. We get to see the predation events. We get to see the pain and struggle that these animals go through. We also get to see their joys, and we get to experience joy and kind of like the miracle of life on these cameras as well. While we have that opportunity, one of the things that I love about the cameras with the Raptor Research Project is every once in a while we get a peek into the lives of other animals that aren't like the main focus. So maybe not eagles or maybe not falcons, but other animals that we can see on the cameras. So let's go to I think this is the Decorah Eagle Cam right now, because it's looking at a brown thrasher that's tucked really well into a thicket of multiflora rose, which if you aren't familiar with that plant, that means you probably have never walked where it lives because it is so thorny. It'll just rip you to shreds. So this is a really great nesting spot, Amy, for this brown thrasher.
Yeah, it's so much fun to watch any of the nest neighbors because we focus on eagles or falcons, but there's a whole world around them that's really, really important, sometimes directly to their survival, but sometimes just nest neighbors. And I love getting this little glimpse into the lives of other birds that maybe have very, very different lives than eagles or falcons. Yeah, shorter nesting times, shorter incubation times, shorter brooding times, and all the rest of it. It's just really fun and really rewarding to see.
Yeah, and brown thrashers, John, are mimics in a sense. So they, kind of like a mockingbird, not quite to that extent, as if I remember correctly, but they will mimic the songs of other birds. So they have quite a vocal repertoire.
Yeah, and this one I can tell where it is down on the ground. I'm not sure that we'll be able to pick up too much of the audio that's coming from that nest with the microphones that are 60, 70 feet up in the tree. But it might be possible that we hear some of that. Each year, we're always amazed at just the different birds that live lot of times in the eagle nest. And, one of those, I'm trying to remember which one nested in the eagle nest this is the Decorah North nest last year, but was it cowbirds? Amy, I can't remember which it was, but we had, or was it, I think it might have been blackbirds in the nest that we were watching, and I don't think it was a successful hatch, but um, as far as vocal, yeah, as far as vocal range, the starlings are always really amazing to listen to this time of year as we get into the warmer season, typically when there's eaglets there in the nest, but I'm not sure how much we'll hear of the starlings, maybe more, so that the eagles aren't tending to the nest right now.
Yeah, I remember. You know what? I'm going to have to go back through our records and look that up because I just do not remember at all what that was. I do remember it though, and yeah, the starlings are great too. So I'd love to hear the thrasher, and we'll probably hear starlings at some point this year because they are also wonderful vocal mimics.
And then also, this is, Amy, this is an opportunity for us to really kind of compare and contrast the different reproductive strategies of a small bird like this, like a thrasher, a songbird, with a very large bird like a bald eagle, or even a medium-sized bird like a peregrine falcon, because the thrashers, they're going to incubate their eggs for about 12 days, so maybe like 2 weeks at the most, and then the young are going to be fledged and out of the nest within another 2 weeks. So less than a month, like they are just kind of done. And maybe they could have multiple clutches. We know that robins, the common backyard robins, they are great at that, at just having more than one clutch per year, per summer. So it's, if we get the chance to continue to watch this thrasher over the next, couple of weeks or so, we're going to see a really rapid development in those chicks once they hatch.
Oh, absolutely. And I do, that's one of the things I love about just thinking about birds in general, right? As people, our closest cousins are pretty still far away from us, right? We don't really have anything else in Homo sapiens. Birds are all over the place, and there are so many different kinds of birds, and they live in so many different ways. Like, imagine you have a bald eagle and a thrasher. Imagine if we had cousins that were 20 times our size and lived a completely different lifestyle. Like, that would be crazy, and that's what we're seeing here in birds. So I hope we get to watch this bird. I hope we get to see it. And I would really look forward to seeing the different kinds of lifestyles that they might have or what fledging looked like. Because this is not a species I know much about other than that it's small and that it lives its reproductive life cycle very quickly. And that's important too because they're not really, I can never remember it's R or K strategist when you're dealing with parental investment. So they do take care of their young. They're not like animals that just lay eggs and walk away, right? But they're sort of at the near end of that. They have their young very quickly. They provide some parental investment, but not quite as much. Their life cycle is shorter, and they do multiple broods, and that's really interesting to me.
And as we come up towards the end of our program today, maybe about 12 minutes or so, there's definitely been some interesting sightings happening and questions that people have had about the Decorah North eagles and the Decorah eagles itself. So backing up, let's just maybe start with the north nest, because we were expecting a hatch at the north nest. We were there was a single egg in there that was being incubated, but the egg failed. It wasn't viable. And Deb was wondering, and John, I know that both you and Amy have thought about this, but Deb was wondering, now that the Norths have stopped incubating their egg, how long until someone is able to go up and get it? I know that was an option for your organization, but I'm not sure how far you went in doing that. And of course, Mr. North incubating it for such a long time, you didn't want to go up there and disturb him.
Yeah. So I think the main factor that we'll probably look at is, one, there's always, we always work safely where we feel confident that we can do this. Taking time to get up there to retrieve the egg We know we'll be up there this fall in September. So we'll be just checking to see, what could we learn from analyzing this egg, and we know we're going to be up there in the fall. Is there an advantage to trying to get up there before that? The eggs are very stable. We found this out back in the early days with Decorah, that once the egg does not hatch, it's very strong from the outside in, and we don't expect something, mice are too small, their jaws are too small, even squirrels, to even try to do something to that egg. It's just too big a circumference for their jaws. Maybe even a raccoon for that part, unless something can pull that egg and take it out, it's probably still going to be there. So we'll be making a decision as to timing, and is there value to taking a look at that egg to try to determine what happened. Why didn't we didn't even see an attempted hatch coming out of that egg like we did with the egg before that. We had a half a hatch actually happen, and we saw a live eaglet inside. I'll make a note too, thanks to our cam operators. They're helping us all the time. I was reminded that that was a grackle in the Decorah North nest that was living right inside the eagle nest the other year.
Oh, right. Yeah. That is, yeah, I do remember that grackle now. Thanks for reminding us of that. Uh, Speaking of nest visitors, Amy, you mentioned this. Maybe we'll go back to our Trempealeau nest real briefly here, but you mentioned that there was a gray squirrel visiting the nest, or a fox squirrel visiting it not that long ago. We do have that clip to bring up. And somebody, and I forgot to write down the name, sorry of who asked this question, but somebody asked the other day, there was a squirrel on the nest running around, TE3 again, the eaglet in the nest. I'm wondering if squirrels live in the nest also. It seems perilous, since I think an eagle would want to eat the squirrel if caught. What are your thoughts?
I Squirrels have been documented nesting in eagles' nests, and eagles will absolutely eat them, but they also probably keep other predators away, right? And if they're below the nest, the eagles are going to have a hard time sort of getting down in there after them. When they're really in danger is when they're not out in the open, often on the ground, but when they're out in the open on the ground, or if they're out on a limb doing something where the eagles can sort of swoop by and get them, right? So nesting in an eagle's nest isn't without risk, but it's safer than you might think, given that eagles do like to eat squirrels, and it might keep some other predators away. So I don't know if the squirrel is nesting in that nest, but I'm not really surprised to see it show up there. And it was really rewarding to see TE3 just get into alert stance and sort of start defending itself, right? Like it's like, okay, all right, you're doing good. I see what you're doing.
Yeah, I've got to mention too that this has to be one of the most enjoyable instances of interaction, between species that I've seen in the eagle nest. Just little TE3 uh, standing up, putting its wings out. I don't know if it was vocalizing. I can't remember if there were actually, there was vocalizations coming out there, but at least opening the beak up, and that playful squirrel definitely was taking its life in its chances on its life, because bald eagles love to eat squirrels, and we see them bring them into the nest. We've seen them take them every once in a while if they can get at them. But that has to be one of the most uh, enjoyable little video clips and interactions that I think I remember seeing in an eagle nest.
Yeah, that was so much fun. And the other thing, when you think about squirrels nesting in an eagle's life, nest, squirrel's life is full of danger, and eagle's life is full of danger. I I don't know. Again, talking about anthropomorphizing, that they would think about it like, oh, these are eagles and they'll eat us. This is dangerous. It would probably be more like, here's a place we can nest, because every place that we can nest comes with risk.
Right. It's often a calculation that they're making, risk versus reward, and they're not. The decision that they're making isn't the same as how we would do it. But that same sort of feeling that's one of the ways I think that anthropomorphism is valuable, that we like they experience feelings that help them make decisions about risk and reward. Does it is the risk too scary for me? Am I too fearful in these situations? Well, okay, if that's the case, I'm going to go and do something else. And squirrels too, they're smart, they're curious. My dog wants to eat squirrels so bad, and every time like this she just can't. She's not smart enough to figure out that the squirrel just goes to the other side of the tree and just looks down at her. So I don't think it's like that. The Junior Gorg from Fraggle Rock, if anybody remembers that show, like trying to catch a Fraggle, like he'll never catch a, my dog will never catch a squirrel. So this is great footage to see. And thanks for your insights on that. Well, with the few minutes left, let's maybe head back to live footage of the Trempealeau nest, because the Raptor Resource Project, John, is hosting a hatch fundraiser coming up pretty soon. Do you want to talk a little bit about what that is?
Yeah, definitely. Each year, our moderators, we connect with people who jump onto the live chat and are part of that experience, asking questions. Sometimes that's classrooms and students and things like that on the platform. But basically, we're celebrating this time of year with the eaglets hatching and just all that brings. It's been a rough year, as we've been talking about with the nests here. We didn't talk about Hatchery Mom and Hatchery Dad, but they're both building a new nest, building on the nest that they started last year. So we're aware now that they most likely didn't have a successful season. So for us to have one eaglet, I guess we had hatches, 3 hatches at Trempealeau, but it isn't always a great year if we want to calculate it or classify as many eaglets surviving as possible as being a good year. This is going to be the great year that we have. Hopefully that TE3 makes it all the way to fledge, but that celebration of eaglets hatching and just that we get to watch this and we get to see this amazing picture of nature and this cycle. We also, it's a fundraiser, and we let people know that their donations all add up, and just free will donations make a big chunk of the financing that allows us to purchase cameras, put them up in the nests, do banding programs with falcons, and do all the things that we do. The research that we do comes from that. So it's an opportunity for us to reach out and get some enjoyment and talk about the success of the nests and what's happening, and then also generate funding to do the programs that we do.
And Amy, where can people go if they want to participate in the fundraiser?
So we'll be having chats on our website. So go to raptorresource.org, click over Watch Birds, and then just select the Trempealeau nest, and you'll see it. I'll also be showing up on the Explore chat on YouTube, so talking to people a little bit there as well, and I'm looking forward to that. And you can donate on our website as well. Go to raptorresource.org and look for Donate, and you can donate via PayPal, via Venmo, and we include our address if you'd like to send us a paper check.
And yeah, just visit raptorresource.org, because it has a ton of amazing information about bald eagles. The blogs that you do, the blog posts that you do, I always find extremely informative. You can get those by signing up to their newsletter as well. So lots to talk about. We're going to do another bald eagle play-by-play in a couple of weeks. So same eagle time, same eagle channel. We'll see what happens and transpires over the next couple of weeks. I think we're going to have some peregrine falcon chicks to look at, and that's going to be really fun. Plus TE5, we're going to see this bird just blow up into a very different looking bird over the next couple of weeks. It's going to grow an awful lot, and a great close-up here thanks to our camera operators. Thanks to Brian Bird behind the scenes, and thanks to KT Miller, who also helps produce these shows. And thanks to John Howe and Amy Reese from the Raptor Resource Project. My name is Mike Fitz with Explore.org. And again, join us in a couple of weeks. We'll be back for another play-by-play. Have a great day, everybody.